Hi guys, so today I'm going to be talking about um, a learning objective about the difference between gravitational force and electrostatic force. And this problem is from 5 Steps to a 5, the 2017 edition. So I'm going to read the problem. The distance between the centers of two objects is d. Each object has identical mass m and identical charge -q. Choose all of the correct statements about the similarities and differences between the electric and gravitational force between the two objects. Choose two answers. So I'm going to go through all of the choices and explain why they're right or wrong. On the right here, I've drawn a diagram of our problem so we can visualize it. So these are charges -q and -q, and we know that they're a distance d apart. On the left here, I have the formulas for the gravitational force and the electrostatic force of between masses, identical masses m and identical charges -q and -q. And these can work between any masses and any charges. So let's look. What's the relationship between the force and the distance, or r, in this formula? Well, we can see that in both these formulas, the force is directly proportional to 1 over r squared. So yeah, we can see that in both of these cases, the force is dependent inversely on the square of the distance d. So we know that A is right. B is again something we can check directly from the formula. B says, just as the gravitational force depends on the sum of the two masses m and m, the electric force depends on the sum of the two charges -q and -q. But when we look at the formulas, we see that these are not the sums, they're actually the products of the masses m and the product of the charges -q and -q. So we know that B is wrong. So let's look at C now. For any measurable m and q in the laboratory, the electric force is many orders of magnitude larger than the gravitational force. We haven't quite looked at the constants yet. This constant, g, is the universal gravitational constant, and this constant, k electrostatic, is Coulomb's law constant. And these are the values for the constants respectively. And as you can see, the universal gravitational constant is many magnitudes larger than smaller, my bad, smaller than the magnitude of Coulomb's law constant. So no matter what numbers we have for the masses and the charges, these numbers are so large and small that we can always tell that the electrostatic force is much greater than the gravitational force in any situation. So now we know that C is right. Let's double check D to make sure that we're on the right track. D says both electric and gravitational forces are attractive. Well, we know that the gravitational force is always attractive, Can you imagine a negative gravitational force? That doesn't make sense. So we know that gravitational force is always attractive. But for charges, the force isn't always attractive. It depends on whether the charges of Q are positive or negative. So if there are two charges that are the same sign, then they're repulsive, and if they're different signs, for example, if this Q was positive and that Q was negative, it would be attractive. But for this problem, since we know that both the Q's are the same sign, they're both negative, we know that the electrostatic force is actually repulsive. So even though the gravitational force is attractive, the electrostatic force is repulsive. So we know that D is wrong. So here I've summarized the main points of what we've learned and the similarities and differences of the gravitational force and the electric force between two charges. So even though these formulas look very similar, the only real similarity they have is that the force is directly proportional to 1 over the distance squared. Other than that, the gravitational force is generally weaker because of the constant g, and the electrostatic force is generally stronger because of the constant k electrostatic. And while gravitational force is always attractive, electrostatic force can be attractive or repulsive depending on the charge. So, hope you enjoyed the video, and that cleared things up for you a little bit.